Welcome to episode 96 of Think Big with Michael Zellner. All positive, no politics. My guest today is Kathi Wright. Kathi is an educator and the director of Don't Drive Drowsy Foundation, and she has been involved in the cause since 2009. She studied early education at Memphis State University. So that tells you that obviously University of Memphis is what it's called now. So she was there before 1993 or 1992. I think that's when the name changed in that area there.
I
She is
think
a
it
really
was before time began.
Exactly. Kathi is a really strong advocate of teaching kids the importance of a good night's sleep and how that saves lives. And she's here today to tell us a lot about that and share that with the audience. Thanks for joining me today, Kathi.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Tell us something interesting about yourself that most people don't know.
Well, this is very exciting. A few years ago, when I was teaching, we had to write something down that most people wouldn't know about us. And we put them all together. And then it was kind of, an activity, an icebreaker for all the teachers at the school. So mine was that I played the triangle in the first grade band. And a few weeks ago, I was at my daughter's house and my granddaughter was telling me about her music class that day. And I said, well, did you play an instrument? And she said, I play the triangle. And I was like, oh, it's hereditary.
That's cool. Did that happen? Did your daughter have her do that because you did it or just
Oh,
happened
my
that way?
daughter wasn't even there. No, I guess the teacher asked them what instruments they wanted to play, and she wanted to play the triangle. My parents, I remember this, they actually had to go out in Brazil, Indiana, and buy a triangle. The school did not provide it.
Wow.
So
Well,
we purchased one.
that is a cool story. I can't believe that she picked the triangle. Once again, it's my thought theory of there are no coincidences at all. You were a teacher here in Memphis for 32 years. You taught at Ross, Southwind, and Lakeland elementary schools. What made you decide to want to be a teacher, Kathi? And what did you enjoy most about working with children?
So when I decided to be a teacher, it was probably because I didn't know anything else that I wanted to do, except I knew that I loved kids and I didn't really enjoy school that much. I thought it could have been a lot more fun. So I always tried to make it fun, but my last several years of teaching, they were trying to take the fun out of it. And I started thinking, this is time for me to go, because I will never stop thinking that kids can learn and have fun at the same time.
Right.
And most kids, then they'll remember it. If there was something fun going on with the learning, they're going to remember doing that. If it's just blah diddy blah diddy blah diddy blah diddy, they're not going to remember it. So I think I went into teaching to make it more fun, thinking that mine was not that fun. And what I remember from my schooling is the social part. Believe it or not, I was kind of quiet in elementary school, but I blossomed in high school and talked a lot, I remember. But those were the things that I remembered, doing this and that with friends and the fun things. So I wanted to make school more fun. And it was for a very long time. I loved the families that I worked with. I loved being part of their lives. I loved helping kids, of course. Everybody loves that. But the last 4 or 5 years of my teaching, it got to be a lot. And I wonder why now they're making it so hard on teachers, because they're just scaring away a lot of talented young people that would love and could be really good teachers. But the stories they hear, I heard some things recently that seasoned teachers are, on medication now because they're so afraid every morning of who's going to pop in their door that day. And do they have the right things written on the chalkboard? And do the kids have the right papers on their desk? That they're just scrutinizing everything. You can't make any mistakes without being written up. And that's ridiculous. People make mistakes.
Absolutely. Let kids just be kids.
Yes. Why do we all have to be the best of everything? We're
No,
not.
I agree. Yeah. And I had a fun childhood too, because, the schools and my parents, they allowed me to be kids, for us to be kids. And so it was a lot more fun. You know,
Oh, yes.
if you would, share with the audience, what happened, on that day back in, 2002, how life changed, in a moment for you and your family.
So I'll start at the beginning. Most people don't even know this because of the tragedy that followed this, but I was sitting at home on a Friday night, exhausted from teaching school, and it was 20 years ago this year. We had on our computer like an answering machine. So whenever we didn't answer the phone, it was recorded on our computer. So a call came in and I wasn't able to get to it. And it was my nephew. He had butt dialed me back in the day. And he was in the car with his good friend and a girl. And I could hear them talking. And from what they were saying, it made me think that they were out by the school I was teaching at, Lakeland Elementary. And I kept yelling his name, Kyle, Kyle, but he couldn't hear me because the phone was in his back pocket, evidently. And so it was recorded, and I kept that computer for years because that recording was so important to me, the last recording of his voice. And when that computer died, it was like losing him all over, just because that recording could not be saved. And I took it to a specialist that it meant that much to me for that part to be saved. But he said the computer was fried and that was gone. But so he had been out with friends, and the guy was spending the night with Kyle. And they asked my sister, his mom, if they could take a walk around the block. And, he was 17. He could walk around the block. And while they were walking around the block, another 17-year-old fell asleep at the wheel and came up on the sidewalk in the exact spot that Kyle was walking and killed him. So by the time we got the phone call, it was probably 10:30, 11. And my daughter was also 17 and a junior at the same high school. And she came into my room with her phone because, of course, she slept with her phone like they all did or still do. And she said, "Mom, it's Nana. She says it's nothing bad, but I know it is." And I took the phone, and my mother may have said 2 million words, but all I heard was 2 words: Kyle's dead. And I honestly remember thinking, my mother has lost her mind, or she's calling in her sleep or something, that this did not happen. And a little while later, she and my sister came over and told us everything. And for days or weeks or months or years, all of us were just in a fog, because I've thought so much about this. When you lose a loved one and they're sick and death is probably coming, it's still very, very, very hard.
Sure.
But when you wake up to a phone call that one of the people you love most on the universe is gone, you can't process it. And so I stayed home the next week. We had the funeral. And when I went back, teachers at school were saying, "Oh, a drowsy driver." I had never even heard that term. You got to remember, this was 20 years ago, but
Right.
I had been saying this driver fell asleep at the wheel and came up on the sidewalk where Kyle walked. And everyone started saying a drowsy driver. So I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, it happens so much that it has a definition and a name for it. And one thing led to another. I taught a couple more years of school, but I couldn't get over the feeling that if it happened so much that it had its own name and definition, that more people needed to know about it. And although I would prefer to speak to second graders, they're not the ones that need my message. So I retired from teaching, called up a local driving school and said, "I have an important message. Can I talk to your class?" And that's 11 years ago, and I still work with this local driving school.
The teenager, you just talked about, driving drowsy. He wasn't on drugs, wasn't out drinking, wasn't out partying. You know, it's 2 a.m. returning from a concert he attended with a church group. What did this young man say after this terrible tragedy?
Um, I don't really, like I said, everything is such a fog from back then. It's almost like it didn't even happen. I don't know who was at the funeral, even family and relatives that flew in from out of town. I have to really, really, really think about it. But I do know that he talked to my sister and he was not drinking. He had a curfew to meet and he knew he was sleepy. But of course, he didn't think that was going to happen.
Right.
But because he was sleepy and he had this curfew, as I remember, he dropped off his friend that had been with him at this concert. And his house wasn't very far away. So he thought it would be fine. And it wasn't. And, for a long time, I was very critical of him. And I assumed he would get some major punishment. But then my sister, of all people, said to me, what if it was Kyle that killed that boy? Ooh, that knocked me down. That was really tough because I'm sure that this young man has struggled.
Oh God, I can't even imagine what that
No.
young man's gone. I mean, he
And
would be about
his parents too, how
yeah.
they must have struggled knowing that their son driving just a few short years killed someone. So it was very hard. And, it was hard, even though there was only a few weeks left in the school year. I've heard from kids that were in his class and they said just seeing his empty chair just broke them. I met a lady, I was out just shopping one Saturday afternoon and somehow this lady and I started talking. She was a cafeteria worker in the high school. And she said she didn't even know Kyle personally, but just the story just made those last few weeks so hard, knowing that the kids and the administrators and the teachers were hurting so much.
You talked about after how this happened, you started questioning yourself about, you being sleepy behind the wheel of a car, and you did some research and you found out there are over 1 million drowsy driving crashes each year. And there's 84 million fatigue drivers on the road every single day. What was going through your mind when you saw these statistics?
That I couldn't believe it, that those numbers are insane, and that every one of the 1.2 million crashes is preventable. Every single one. That's the part that's so heartbreaking. All the families that are destroyed, and it's billions of dollars into drowsy driving crashes every year. But those numbers come from NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which they're the experts in everything dealing with the roads. So they're pretty accurate, and they're just astounding. They're unbelievable. And to know that with just in little sleep and education, knowing that this might happen if I drive while I'm not 100%, I think we could change everything.
I've thought back, to times I know that I drove drowsy. I know. I mean, every person probably has at some point in time.
Everyone has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I can remember times. I mean, even driving on vacations, on trips, and long distances, especially. You think, oh, I can make it. Oh, I can make it. And everything, and you do whatever you can. Turn roll down your windows. Have a drink and everything, and it still doesn't do it. You're still tired.
I feel like that's why education is so important, because I can only think of one time that I drove drowsy, but I had my only child in the car and my good friend and her only child. We had to get to Florida early in the morning so that we would have basically a whole extra day. So they're all asleep in the car, and I remember this so well. And I'm singing, and that's terrible to hear, but they were, asleep. I'm singing. I've got my head hanging out the window. I'm trying to get cool air blowing in my face and thinking I should really not be driving. but I never went as far as to think that I could kill all of us. But after that happened to Kyle, I immediately went back to that night and knew God was with us, because I could have killed every one of us and know who else on the road. But that's again back to why education is so important. But when you said and I said same thing about the cold air in the face, that's the number one warning sign that you're too sleepy to be in the driver's seat. As soon as you start thinking, "Whew, I need cold air blowing in my face or loud music to keep me awake," you should not drive. After that, you need to pull off the road as soon as safely possible, because it's not going to get any better from that point.
Right.
There's nothing you can do at that point to wake you up. You can have some caffeine and you can eat this and drink that, but your body just can't go on and on and on forever.
Right. No dose, can only work up to a certain point.
I have never tried anything like that, but the bottom line is, are you going to risk your life on the no dose,
Right.
or on the cold air keeping you awake? It's not like you're in a padded room. You're in a vehicle weighing 10 to 50,000 pounds, glass and steel, going 60, 70, 80 miles an hour down the road.
Right.
So I feel like it's the definition of insanity to keep driving once you realize, "Ooh, I'm sleepy." And you may not have felt sleepy before you got in that nice, warm, comfy seat.
Right.
But once you feel that way, you just cannot keep driving.
You got involved with this, on a school level back, I believe, in 2009, and you talked about how you started. You called up a driving school and offered to go present your information about drowsy driving to students. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that first presentation went.
Oh, I hate to think about it. Well, I was still so emotional, even though it'd been a couple of years. If you've ever lost somebody so important to you, it hurts for a very long time. And here, May 5th, 2022 was the 20th reunion, or not reunion, anniversary. And it was a terrible day for me. I cried like it was the first day, just thinking about Kyle and how smart he was and how beautiful he was. And whenever I meet someone that knew him, how kind he was. They always say that, how kind he was, which makes me so proud of him, because he was not always kind to his family. He was a little stinker. One time I remember he was super intelligent and really good with computers, even way back then. But he'd been at my house, and he was really good friends with my daughter, his cousin. And so he'd been messing around with my computer. And as soon as he walked out the door, I went over to the computer, and he had done something with the tracking. So wherever I moved the mouse, it left little marks all over the screen. And I ran out the door screaming at him, "Get back in here." And he just smiled. But that same computer, I bought this cabinet for it, because I firmly believed back then, and probably still now, every computer should be in the central area of the home just to keep the kids safe. So the hole wasn't big enough in the back for all the cords to go through. So Kyle was over there, and I said, "Hey, I've got this little electric saw thing. Can you make that circle bigger?" Oh my gosh, for a smart kid, sometimes. So he made like this giant L. I don't know. He said, when I looked at it, I said, "Well, Kyle," and he goes, "I know, it just kind of got away from me." But those are sweet memories now.
Yeah.
But he was so smart. He could have done anything. He wanted to be an architect, always dreamed of being an architect. He would have been amazing. He would have been an amazing husband and father, and all of the things that were taken from him in our family in that very unnecessary crash.
Tell us, if you do you remember that presentation that you made, that first
Oh,
one?
I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah.
okay. We're just talking good conversation here.
I get carried away with my own thoughts.
It's
So
okay.
what I do remember about it is that it was 20 minutes. And I'm sure that I mostly talked about how precious Kyle was to our family, and now we're the family with the empty chair. And holidays we really struggle with holidays. And I had looked up a little bit of information about drowsy driving at that point, but with questions and everything, I was out the door in 20 minutes and emotionally, just gone. I couldn't have spoken another minute anyway, but now my presentation has grown, and it's about 45 minutes with questions. Sometimes it's an hour. If the kids participate, which I really want them to, that doesn't always happen. But when they do participate, I think it's so helpful because, again, if it's not really fun, but if you're engaged and you're participating and thinking of the answers instead of me just sitting there telling you the answers, then I feel like there's a better chance that the kids are going to remember the information. So as far as that first presentation, I'm glad only 20 kids saw it, and that he invited me back is very surprising. But he's always said he had a young son at the time, the owner of the driving school. I think he was in high school, his son, and that he was not only a student, he was working a couple of jobs. So he was always checking with his son and making sure he was okay to drive, because he, as a driving school owner, was aware of this problem.
Early on when you started speaking out about this, you weren't taken very seriously. You
No.
said people told you, quote, I don't care about your cause. We all drive drowsy at times, unquote. What was your response when someone said that to you?
I had forgotten those very hurtful comments, but they're 100% true. Well, the one about I don't care about that cause, we were on the phone, and they were a service provider for me. I had used their service for about, 10 years. So I canceled their service.
Absolutely.
I didn't cuss her out or anything like I felt like it, but I just canceled their service. And I don't even think that I could have handled it much better and said, this is a major problem, and we're losing lives every day over this. And you probably have drivers for you that are not all that much awake, but I didn't handle it very well. I just canceled them. But people kind of thought it was a joke. I went through that for many years. And sometimes I thought, I can't keep doing this. And I'll tell you a little story. It might sound crazy, but from the day Kyle was killed, I kept seeing 1111 or 111 on the clock several times a day on my watch. And a few years later, my family was in the car and it was 1111. And I said, oh my gosh, again. And my daughter said, what are you talking about? And I said, I see 1111 so many times since the day that Kyle was killed. And she said, I see it all the time. And then my sister and my mom were like, I do too. And I was like, why did I keep this to myself all these years? So we did a fundraiser for 10 years. We had the Eye Opener 5K, of which you were very supportive. And after one race, particularly painful, not that many participants, my daughter had asked me to go to Lowe's and buy some flowers for her. So this will all come together, I promise. I go to Lowe's and I buy all these flowers, and it's $111.11.
No
And I'm
coincidences.
like, I had said to myself after the race, I can't keep doing this. It's so much work and it's so hard. And I really need to focus on speaking at high schools. But this race was important to some of us. And it was another way to get our message out. So I go buy the flowers, $111.11. I'm like 1 or 2 pots of flowers short. I go back to Lowe's, $11.11.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, okay, Kyle, I'm going to keep doing the
Exactly.
race.
Exactly.
I mean, that gives me chills just talking about it. And I saved those receipts for so long, but in the last 2 moves, I haven't been able to find them. But I was like, I would do anything that he asked me to do. And that was just my sign. yes, people need this race. You can do this. So I did.
And that, I'm sure you've looked up about the number 11.
I have.
And you know what I mean with angels and everything. And I see the number 11 too all the time since my father passed away in 2013. And I know, once again, it's my dad, you know, I think we've talked about this before. I'm a big believer in the spirit world, and know that, you know, energy, it never dies, and our loved ones are around us all the time. I've talked about this on other podcasts. I went to see, you know, John Edward, the very
Oh,
famous
okay.
medium. I've seen him
Yeah.
3 times live,
Uh-huh.
twice here in Memphis and once in Little Rock. And one of the things that he says is that our loved ones don't they don't miss us because they have us, because they're around all the time. They don't
Oh,
miss
okay.
us.
Huh.
We miss them because we can't see them and talk to them, but they don't miss us because
Hmm.
they're around us all the time. And
I love that.
it gives me a lot of, you know, comfort to know that my dad's always around. And
Yeah.
I've had a couple different readings from people and information that I've been given in those readings. Um, uh, Shar Margolis, who's a real famous medium, also. It was over the phone. Never met her. My Facebook page was private. All the things that were said to me, there's no way she could have known. No
Oh,
way.
wow.
And so those kind of things give me a lot of comfort, you know.
Yes, it's very comforting. Yeah, we have all now started taking pictures on our phone when 1111 pops up or 111. We have albums of that on our phone.
That is
It,
really
it's
awesome.
comforting.
It is. It is.
Kyle should be here today, but because he isn't, I want his message, or it's not his message. I want this message to reach as many people as possible. And some days it's very hard. I have cried when people tell me, no, we're not interested in that. Our kids don't need to hear that. Yes, they do.
Right.
Why are you thinking that? And, you know, you get enough no's, sometimes you just have to lose it for a little while. But with anything, it just makes me stronger. I'm going to continue this fight. I don't care if you are thinking your kids don't need to hear it, they need to hear it.
Absolutely. You know, driving for teens is already, you know, risky enough even before you added the addition of lack of sleep. And, you know, teens are more likely to crash, you know, than drivers, you know, all other age groups, you know, and that risk is highest usually during the first month they get their driver's license. In 2020, car accidents were the leading cause of unintentional injury for ages 15 to 24 years old. You know, why do you think that's the case?
Well, I'm pretty sure I know the reason. Your brain isn't fully developed until you're 25, which is astounding that we put 14, 15-year-olds in a car. And then the guys have an extra component of testosterone, which is, you know, they have young teenagers, males have a massive amount of testosterone, which on the one hand makes them feel invincible. I can do
Right.
anything. I
Right.
can win the World Series. I can win the Super Bowl. I can win the track meet. And I can also make it home
Yeah.
when I know I haven't had enough sleep. So a majority of the teen crashes are committed by males. Not that girls don't commit crashes, they certainly do. But I feel like testosterone has a lot to do with it, and males are more impulsive.
You know, I know
So
it's
when
a,
I teach a class, I always ask, who do you think commits more drowsy driving crashes, males or females? And when I say males, all the females' hands go up. And when I say females, all the male hands go up. And they all have many, many reasons why the other gender commits so many crashes.
right.
But I think in their minds, the guys are always thinking, I do some dumb stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
We all
remember.
did. We all
Yeah,
did as teenagers.
I drove
I
like
mean,
an idiot.
seriously.
I mean, I drove like a crazy idiot sometimes. I mean, I remember stupid driving like 70, 80 miles an hour down Poplar at like 17, 18 years old. Just you think you're impressing people and doing stuff, and it's just stupid. I mean, I was so lucky that nothing bad happened. Obviously, just so lucky.
I mean, you grew up to be fine, but the best thing that could have happened to you at that point was for you to be stopped by the police.
Yep. Very
I mean,
true.
you fared well through it anyway, but I work a lot with the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. They give us a grant and they're very supportive of my work. And uh, just the things that I've learned from them and stories that I hear from them. The graduated driver's license has helped a lot. The teen is the only one in the car. So that helps a lot. I mean, the more kids you add to the car, of course, more craziness is going to happen. But the Tennessee Highway Safety Office is so committed to saving lives, and especially their teen safe driving programs. They're very committed. I got an email the other day that in Tennessee, I wish I had the exact number in my head, that the number of teen deaths due to car crashes has decreased in the last year and a half, which is amazing because all it does is increase every year.
Right. I know it's a little bit off the subject, but now you talk about teens texting and driving too. The huge dangers that's brought into the world over the
Yes.
last 20 years or so when people started texting. It used to be the phones where you could maybe, if you knew where all the numbers were, you could text without looking at the phone because you could use your thumb. Now with smartphones, you can't. You have to, you're looking down or you're looking at that screen. And I'm sure you're like me, you're driving down the street and you see people doing it all the time. They're swerving and they're just not paying attention. So how many lives you think have been lost, with both, so many lives have been lost with both teens and adults that they do this now. What do you think has changed that where people are just taking more risk, that they feel like that, like I think maybe you said that the invincibility thing, maybe?
I think so. Nothing's going to happen to me. This text is so important that I'm willing to risk my life and the lives of my kids in this car, my friends in this car. So a friend of mine has a nonprofit. Her fiance was killed by a texting driver, and then the driver left the scene after she had killed someone. But again, the Tennessee Highway Safety Office supports so many nonprofits that are focused on texting and driving. It if you stop and think about it, it's so insane to do that. But a few years ago, the Tennessee Highway Patrol had a free driver's school for teens in Nashville in the summer, and I was a guest speaker there. And I stayed and listened to the girl that was speaking about texting and driving. And she asked the kids, why do y'all think that this is okay? And every kid raised their hand and said, I've seen my mother do it my whole life. Wake up, parents. They're watching you. They're watching everything you do.
I never thought of that right there. And it's just an obvious answer.
It is.
I remember doing texting and driving with my nephew, and he's 22 now. I remember when he was young driving and he's in the back seat in a seatbelt, I think in his little safety, the chair. And I was texting. I'll never forget it, driving down Germantown Parkway. And I remember I got to a light and this little kid said, Uncle Michael, are you texting and driving? And I was
Busted.
like, I said, not anymore, Greg. Not anymore.
They'll keep us on our toes. My oldest grandson turned 13 yesterday. And my daughter has told me that a couple of times he said to her, Mom, you just rolled through that stop sign in their neighborhood. And I said, he's watching you. And in 2 years, he's going to be driving. And my son-in-law will say, he's not going to be driving in 2 years. And I think, good, because he's not, he does, like they all do, not always great decisions. So they are watching. And again, with the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, they do this bus tour once a year in Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, maybe one other city. A giant bus rolling down Germantown Parkway that says Tennessee Highway Safety Office all over it. And we're surrounded by motorcycle cops and police and Shelby County sheriffs all around this bus. And they are pulling over people left and right for texting. But my favorite one was this lady, not at a stoplight or anything, driving down Highway 64. she's taking a selfie. So she's got this hand up and driving and smiling. And then I guess that wasn't good enough. So now she does it on this side, getting the best selfie while she's going 50 miles an hour down Highway 64. And, you know, all the lights flashing and everything. She was just totally oblivious to everything. And they ride up like 200, 300 people a day or an hour. These tours are only an hour. Yes. So it's just rampant. And I don't know how we're going to stop people from doing that. They have to care, for one thing. And a lot of people don't care. It's the law, but so is the graduated driver's license. That's the law. And parents don't enforce it because they need their teen driver to go pick up the little brother, or they need a gallon of milk and they don't have time to, you know, so they don't enforce the graduated driver's license like some of them need to be doing that.
And you don't hear much about texting. I mean, it's talked about a little bit, texting and driving, but not to the amount it should be.
Oh, in my world, that's all I hear about. Drunk driving has taken a back seat. I feel like drugged driving goes along with drunk driving, but I feel like that's all the kids hear about is texting and driving, but they don't stop. Too many of them. You know, it's hard to say. A lot of them are smart enough to know this is so dangerous, and my parents would kill me if I crashed the car or got hurt or something. But their texts are very important, so important that they can't even turn them off to get any sleep. That
Right.
they'll stay up all night texting, which I don't understand that at all. If I'm about to fall asleep and I get a text, even though my phone is in the other room, I might hear it on my iPad that I read at night in bed. And so now I'm awake and now I'm irritated at that person. It's 10:30. Why would you be texting me? You know, I'm going to bed. So we need to make sure our devices are off. You know, some of us have elderly parents, so I do keep my phone off, even though I am sure my mother wouldn't call me until the next day if she was having some kind of emergency because she wouldn't want to bother me. But I do keep my phone on, and I ask the kids to silence their devices. They'll still get their alarm in the morning, but they won't get the notifications. And some parents even take their kids' phones at night, and I love that.
Yep.
I love that. They're 15. They don't need a phone. Some will say, well, what if my grandma dies? Well, in the morning, your parents are going to tell you about that, but you're not the adult. You don't need to worry about those kind of adult things when you're a teenager, but it's just very hard to get them we're addicted to our devices. I'm sure everyone's aware of that.
Yep. And they knew
And
that was going to happen. They knew exactly what they were doing when they developed these smartphones.
I hadn't thought about that, but one day I was teaching a class, and at this school, the kids could have their phones out. And I asked a teacher that because they were all on the phone while I'm teaching this lesson that could save their lives. And it was very irritating plus rude. And I said, why do y'all allow them to have their phones out? I've never been at a school. I'm at schools all over Tennessee. No one's ever had their phone on their desk. And she said, it's just a battle we choose not to fight. And I thought, what the heck? It's an important battle. So the kids would have the phones on their desk, and like every 5 seconds, they would be turning it over to see if they'd gotten any text. It was like crack. They couldn't leave the phone alone.
And now with telephones, I believe you can silence it for everybody, but like maybe a few people that can still get through in case of an emergency. So, you know, that's another option right there too.
Yes. They can put their phone on do not disturb or airplane mode or sleep. They've got 3 options now where they're not going to get any notifications, but they will get their alarm in the morning. So, and all the notifications, they can find out about them the next day, and they're going to be just fine. Nothing was earth shattering that was being texted about during the night. I truly believe that. We're not trying to be mean. We're trying to keep them alive.
Yeah. It's that impatient mentality now that got to have it now, 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 now. Got to see it now, read it now, post it now. It
But
can't wait.
that's now that you say that, that's like an infant. That's how an infant reacts to things. Mine now.
Right.
So let's be more mature and know that this can wait till tomorrow. It can.
You said, quote, if you're tired, you should pull over for a rest or a brief nap, unquote. The decision to get behind the wheel or stay on the road, despite, feeling really drowsy, can be obviously, there it's deadly. And what are some of the main signs of a drowsy driver? And why don't more people stop and just take that nap or just stop driving altogether at that point?
They're on a mission. We have to be there by 3:00, come hell or high water. We got to be there. But yes, I recommend that you pull over to a safe, well-lit location with the doors locked. Safe, well-lit, doors are locked. Have a caffeinated beverage, which means a black coffee, and a 30-minute nap. It takes 30 minutes for the caffeine to kick in. So when you wake up, you've got a decision to make. Am I good to drive, or should I get a hotel, call my parents, plan B, C, D, whatever it is? But in my opinion, you are probably not awake and alert enough to continue driving. You probably need to, get some sleep. So when you experience the warning signs, which are just like what happens to you at school or work when you start falling asleep, you stop blinking, number one. And I have read that the cars of the future have technology that's going to focus on your eyes, technology in the rear view mirror. It'll focus on your eyes, and when you stop blinking, the car is going to take over. Well, I'm not 100%, I'm not even 50% sold on driverless cars. I want to be in control of my car, but when you stop blinking, the technology realizes that you're going to go to sleep. So, your head bobs, you don't remember where you've been, you're all over the road, and like I said previously, thinking that cold air will help you. Shh. A little bit, stop. Cute puppy.
Hello.
A little bit.
A little bit.
So don't ignore the warning signs. People say, I had no idea I was going to fall asleep while I was driving. Well, did you know what time you went to bed? Did you know what time you got up? Did you know how you felt about your sleep? And did you have any hesitation or thought that maybe you weren't awake, alert enough to be driving today? And you ignored all of this. You ignored the blinking, no more blinking. You ignored the head bobbing. And then you were shocked when you fell asleep at the wheel.
About 9.5 years ago, my niece went to Florida on her spring break, her senior year at Germantown. A group of people went. It was two adults who took, with the kids, and they took two cars down there. One adult in each car. And on the way back, however, both adults drove in the rear car, and 5 teens were in the front one. My niece was driving through Mississippi with 4 others in an SUV, and she yawned. Maybe even obviously, drowsy driving, fell asleep a little bit there, obviously being very tired, staying up real late the night before they left. She started veering towards the part of the highway where your tires make the real loud noise on the side, right before you're about to go off. And she tried to turn the wheel back, and she overcorrected, and they flipped 7 or 8 times. I believe 2 of the kids in the car, they were thrown from the car. Everyone survived. No major injuries at all. Every injury was recoverable. I'll never forget going to see her at the med. When I walked in the room, the first thing she said to me was, "Uncle Michael, Pawpaw pushed me back from heaven."
Oh, my word.
My dad had passed away about 6 to 8 weeks before that spring break trip. And I've always said, that my dad had to go when he went to make sure that Jordan was going to be okay. And that obviously could have been and probably should have been much, much, much worse than it was. They got so lucky, Kathy.
Oh, it was a miracle. It was
Yeah.
truly a miracle that no one was seriously injured.
Yeah. I
Mm,
mean, unbelievable how, just we're talking about how life can just change in a split moment, but it was that they stayed up too late.
yep.
One adult should have been in each car, with those kids and the way it was, and just so lucky. I mean, as many times as that car flipped over, when I heard the story, I'm like, there's no way. And she said, that's exactly how it happened. I was
Wow.
like, very, very lucky. But, that's one of the things going back to what we just talked about. I believe that, my dad was obviously involved there to make sure that, they were going to be okay.
Good job, Dad. Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. I
You,
hope those girls realize uh, about drowsy driving, and they're advocates for getting enough sleep and never getting in the car when you've had a couple hours of sleep with a car full of friends.
yep.
Good.
And, and they're all probably 27 now, and thankfully they're all still here. But I hope that they do think about that sometimes and realize how lucky
Sure they do.
and blessed that they are. This has gone well beyond, Memphis over the last 13 years. You've taken this across the state of Tennessee. Tell us about some of the things that you've done to get your message out to teens across the state.
Well, I pester schools all the time. I go to conferences and set up a booth and talk to people, tell my story. And everyone in every conference I've ever sat at, everyone that stops at my booth wants to tell their own drowsy driving story. And I've just heard hundreds, if not thousands of them. We all have one, like you said earlier. I had my one, but I might have had more. I know once I got Sirius radio, I know everyone thinks that's crazy, but that's the thing that has really saved me. Traveling as much as I do and not having something decent to listen to was painful. So I probably have been sleepy traveling to schools. But once I got Sirius Radio, I can always find something or a podcast or something to listen to. So that helps me so much because I love, being engaged in someone's story or things like that. That's very interesting to me. But so I reach out to schools, and schools have a lot of filters on their email. So I'm told many times my emails never make it through. But I meet people and people spread the word for me. And last spring, I went to the Lifesavers Conference in March in Chicago, and they had like, I don't know, 5,000 people that are involved in safe driving. So that was very fun for me. And, because this is my life now.
Right.
This is all I think about is keeping these kids alive and getting out the don't drive drowsy message. So to be with all these people that know the importance of drowsy driving, or education on drowsy driving, I should say, it was a really special time. And we passed out a lot of information and have been contacted, made some really great contacts, as a matter of fact. But I am not happy or satisfied with just reaching out to the kids in Tennessee. I feel like kids across the nation need to know this information. And a couple of years ago, I was contacted by a lady in California. But through a series of events, she got my name and asked me to write something for the newspaper there about drowsy driving, which I did and never thought about it again. But next thing I know, she's emailing me that California had passed a law that their middle and high schools were going to start no earlier than 8:30 this year, every middle and high school in the state of California. And she said, and your letter had something to do with it. And I thought,
Wow.
not much, but I'm glad that it did. So there's a group called Start School Later, and I've been supportive of their efforts. And some local high schools here have changed their start times, but not enough to really matter, like 20 minutes. But
Yeah.
so many schools start at 7 o'clock, where every group of doctors that study teens and sleep, 250 groups of doctors, all say the same thing. Middle and high school should not start before 8:30. So
It's just
the
common sense to change it.
The opponents always say that just means the kids will stay up later texting. But I ask in every class I teach, if we gave you an extra hour or an extra hour and a half, would you use it to sleep? And of course, they say resoundingly, yes. Oh, we need more sleep. Whether they actually would, research says they will.
Right.
So that's what I'm going with, that they know they know they're so tired. If I dread the classes that I speak to after school, because they've been up since like 6 o'clock in the morning, and here it is 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm yammering on about drowsy driving. And
Oh
they're
my
like,
God. I
oh,
would have loved to have an extra hour in the morning. I remember my dad flipping the light on to wake us up in the morning. And I would always say 5 more minutes. And then it was 5 more minutes a few times. Finally, get up,
yeah.
are going to be late. But yeah, school 7:15 at Ridgeway back when I went to school there.
I
It's
think my high school was 8 o'clock.
yeah,
Of course,
maybe
it was
7:30.
20 degrees below zero and dark, but
Yeah.
um, we expect too much from the kids. Like I said earlier, they have to be the top of this class. They have to be the president of this group. They have to be involved in everything. They think they have to go to the top colleges. I don't know where most of my friends went to college. It doesn't matter. They're nice people. I like them. They have good jobs. They're doing their best. And that's what I tell the kids. If you're doing your best, that's good enough.
Absolutely.
You don't have to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning studying for a test. Oh, that's one thing I want to make sure I say before I leave here. The worst thing you can possibly do if you're a kid in school is stay up all night studying for your test and then think you're going to just walk in and spill all that. The saying goes, you have to sleep on it. There's a reason for that saying. You have to make it a memory consolidated in your brain. And the way you do that with information is you get a healthy night's sleep, or you've been studying for several nights like you should, and you've slept on that information for several nights. Now you'll remember it. Now you'll do great on the test.
I know you well enough to know that what you do is never about you, Kathi. However, at the 2018 Tennessee Lifesavers Conference, you were the recipient of the Making a Difference Award by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office and also the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. Tell us a little bit about what that award stands for and, what receiving it meant to you.
Well, when I got the phone call, my daughter was living in Boston at the time, and I was in Boston, and I was shocked. I couldn't even believe it. She was at the neighbor's house across the street with the kids, and I walked over there like in a daze, and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm getting this award for my work on drowsy driving." And she said, "Mom, that's great." And I lost it. I just cried and cried and cried because I said, I can't believe anybody noticed. It was shocking to me that people had noticed how committed, how devoted, how crazy I am to get this message out. And it meant so much to me because there's so many people. If you ever are in the nonprofit world, there's so many people and so many great causes. It's just amazing. Since we only hear about the bad crap that goes on all the time, it's amazing all the people doing good work in this world. But that they had picked me, it was very humbling to say the least. Yeah.
Speaking of moments, of feeling good, and knowing what you're doing is making a difference. What was it like for you to see those words, "Please don't drive drowsy," for the first time displayed on, the interstate message board across the state?
That was one of the easiest things I have ever done in my Don't Drive Drowsy career. As we talked, people said no, 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 or just ignored me, or even blocked me. Some people I've contacted have blocked me, and I'm like, seriously? I'm
Right.
just a little lady trying to do some good. So I called the Department of Transportation, and the lady that answered was very nice. I said, Tennessee has a lot of travelers, a lot of vacationers come to Tennessee, and this safety message is, people just don't hear about it. Would you consider running please don't drive drowsy on the message boards? And she said, yes. And I cried again. I got off the phone and cried because that was too easy. It
Right.
never worked out like that. So anyway, it's been running for many years, a couple of times a year, but Tennessee gets like hundreds of thousands of people traveling on I-40. So when that message runs, it just makes me so happy. And all our friends, text us, oh, saw the message. That's so great that you're
That's
doing
awesome.
this. I
Well,
wish more people in every state, because I know there's people there that have this same story as me. And I don't know why. I don't know why I do this.
yeah, you do. You know why you do it.
I do. I do
Yeah.
it for Kyle, but I'm trying to save these. I don't want Kyle's memory to be forgotten. He was an amazing kid. We truly loved him hard, and he was going to do something great. So his legacy will be that his family continued this drowsy driving fight.
And help save lives while doing it. Tell us a little bit about your daughter, Hallie, her husband, Stephen, and your grandkids.
Well, they recently moved to Franklin, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville, which makes me so
Oh,
happy.
I
I
bet.
don't get on 2 airplanes and spend the whole entire day getting there. So my friends say, so do you go there often? Yeah, I act like they're 30 minutes away. In fact, my grandson's birthday was, as I said yesterday, but last weekend they came to Memphis for a Grizzlies game. That's what he wanted for a birthday present. So they came here, but I went to Franklin to stay with my granddaughter, and they're also fostering 2 adorable little lab puppies. So I babysat puppies and grandbaby, and then we switched places. I came back to Memphis, they went back home, but it's wonderful. They're 13, 9, and 6, and full of energy. No slugs in that family, that's for sure. They're always busy, and they're always happy. And they say to me, Grammy, why do you laugh so much? Because everything y'all do is so funny.
I bet you
I
spoil
am
them.
very blessed. I am very blessed. So Kyle's name was Kyle William, and one of the boys' middle name is Kyle, and the other boy's middle name is William. So
Nice.
that makes me so happy that my daughter, well, I know she loved Kyle, but she wants that the boys know about drowsy driving and in the work that I'm doing. They'll even say to me, have you taught any classes lately?
Oh, nice. How did
Yeah.
Hallie and Stephen meet?
They met at the University of Memphis, and she thought he was pretty cute. And I guess her friend went over and told him that they had a class or a couple of classes together. And evidently, I think the story goes that he had just been involved in a relationship. So he told my daughter that he wasn't interested. Well, game on. That was the end of that. And they got engaged a couple of years later, and he played in the NFL. So they lived away for 14 years. And when they told me they were coming to Tennessee to look for a house, I was just shocked. I thought they would live there forever because they had such great friends and always something going on, and the kids had great friends and great schools. But nope, here they are in the state of Tennessee, and very happy to be. Stephen was a volunteer coach at a local high school this past year, football coach, and he's going to be really good at whatever he decides to do, but he was really good at that, and the kids love him because he's still young, and they know who he is, and so he does have some expertise, so they listen to him, but
Sure.
he's an encourager, and he's very encouraging to kids. When I was teaching, I had him come speak to my kids, and I think he was still in college at that point. And I was blown away how mature he was and how much the kids just hung on every word he said. So he spoke at the Lifesavers Conference in Tennessee this year. He was the guest speaker, and he did amazing.
But he did.
I'm always very proud of him.
What are the most important lessons you've learned in life?
Mm. Ooh, wow, that's a hard one. I've learned so many because I've done everything wrong. I admire people that are good listeners. I think people tell you so much about themselves by their words and also by their actions. So just pay attention. And one thing that I've learned is whatever is a problem to me today, in a month, maybe a week even, it won't even matter. So there's no reason to get upset or out of sorts about anything. I need to focus on what's important to me, which is family and friends and my message, and just stay the course. People are going to try to bring you down. I don't know why, but that's just the way things go sometimes. So focus on the people that you love and the people that encourage you. Like, with my Don't Drive Drowsy Foundation, I was wondering who's going to be on my board. Oh, nobody wants to be on my board. It's not that fun. You just have to, as a nonprofit, you have to have a board. And next thing I know, I've got friends saying, I'll be on your board. Of course I will. I love you. I would do anything. And so let people surprise you. Let them and be the one that surprises other people too. Like, say, I can help you. I can do that for you. Don't just sit there and let somebody else do it. I don't know. I listened to Dr. Laura on Sirius Radio, and sometimes I've listened to her for years. Sometimes she's such a bitch, but sometimes she's got it on, and she says this one thing over and over. You've got this one life. Is this how you want to spend it? So I'm going to say yes. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm surrounded by people that I love and that love me. And when I have a hard day, I try to remember that this is just momentary, a little blip on the screen. It'll make me stronger.
If someone wants to know more about Don't Drive Drowsy Foundation, where can they find that online?
So we have a brand new website, hot off the presses. It's DONT, D-O-N-T, letter D.org, don'tdd.org. Or awesome. They could always email me at Kathi B. Wright at don'tdrivedrowsy.org.
We met, at my former store, Sleepy Z's. I was about 8 years ago or so, and you shared with me with what you were doing, and I was so happy to be involved with the 5K. Did that for several years, and as I said, you're doing something amazing, and you're not only making a difference in teenagers' lives, but I know that you have saved many lives too by your message, and will continue to do that. So I really appreciate you coming on today to tell your story.
I appreciate you saying that. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but I think you're right. And you're the kind of person I was just talking about. You're the volunteerer. Hey, I'll have this, I'll host that, I can do this, I can support that. You're that person. So you have been a blessing in my life. And here we are today, all these years later. And I know you've had your struggles, and look at you today. You're doing great, and you're helping other people because you're a helper. And we're doing good.
Yeah. I give
just because I came to ask you for money one time.
Yep. And that's, once again, things happen that way, and relationships started. So it's been awesome, and I love what you're doing. So just keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathi.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.